Jeremy, thank you so much for coming to Startup Steering today. I'm really interested in learning more about biomechanics, and learning about your story. But before we get to the company, let's start with a little bit of background. Tell me how you sort of got started, what your education was, and then we'll sort of work our way up.
Yeah, so growing up, I've always been really into health and wellness and into medical. So I actually started as an exercise and movement science, studying that, realized I didn't want to be an athletic trainer, on the side of a JV soccer game for the rest of my life. So I actually went to Northwestern, and I'm a biomedical engineer by training. So my focus was on signals and systems. So the electrical engineering, the more math systems modeling approach for biomedical engineering. My intention was to actually be an MD PhD. I did get into medical school, but I didn't get into the research side. And really for me, my interest has always been on building technology and modeling and understanding. And so I ended up getting into industry. And so I spent most of my career, my first half of my career as a biomedical engineer. I started in acute care medical records, which is important when we get to Biocanic. So I did the original, what was called, they were called PACS systems, but which was the digital radiology systems for hospitals. So that's where I started at GE. Then I actually came out to San Diego here and worked for a cardiovascular company. We were doing nonlinear systems modeling, which is now buzzwordy machine learning for doing non-invasive cardiac output monitoring. Super, super cool. I was doing all the fun stuff with systems estimation. I always like telling the story was, I was in engineering and I was doing machine learning, but I had to write all the code. I didn't get the benefit of just dumping it into AWS. So when I came back to the Biocanic side, it was like, wait a minute, you can just do this without having to code it in MATLAB. So I spent basically the first 10 years of my career as an engineer, and then I got into product management and went over to ResMed. So I spent about 12 to 13 years at ResMed as a product manager, and actually grew into a vice president in the software as a service. But at ResMed,
let me just stop you 1 second. That first 10 years, was it all with GE, or did you?
No. So I was with GE for I think 3 years, and then 7 years at the company was called Cardinamics. They got acquired. That got acquired. And none of those companies exist anymore.
It's a little
I never name dropped.
Fish, right? Okay, got it. Sure. Continue on that journey. What happened after that?
Yeah, so I started at ResMed as a product manager in their CPAP division, covering the sleep apnea devices. But really, where I kind of really grew within the organization was I led their connected devices initiative. So from really pushing the company to actually add onboard cellular chips before cellular connectivity on devices was ubiquitous. And so that was a really big transformation of my career. It actually led to a transformation of ResMed being the leading connected medical devices manufacturer in the world. They now have, I think, over 5 million connected medical devices, and it really built out an ecosystem. And then so because of the connectivity, we had patient engagement systems, disease management systems, and then ultimately, because of my software background, I actually moved into what is now the software as a service division. So I led the strategy part of that, which led to a number of acquisitions. We actually deployed about $2 billion in capital in acquisitions. It's now a very substantial business for them, really focused on post-acute care electronic medical records. So home medical equipment, home health, skilled nursing, assisted living. Really got into a lot of different applications of software as a service, electronic medical record platforms. And so really that's where my career kind of finished with ResMed. But the inspiration came as I was basically an executive at ResMed, which is really where Biocanic came from.
Got it. So tell us what the inspiration was, or what that problem was. It's generally, it manifests itself as a problem, right? So
yeah, exactly. So you take my background in engineering and passion around kind of understanding health and physiology, and I, like probably every person that watches this video, has personal health issues, and I was just not getting it. I was doing everything right, working out all the time, eating organic, eating gluten-free, doing all the right things, and my health was actually going in the wrong direction. Was getting weight gain, afternoon headaches, all kinds of strange stuff, chronic back pain. and I couldn't find the right answer. It was super frustrating, especially being an engineer and you're doing the right things. And interestingly, is I was kind of in the software as a service executive role. My wife was actually training to be what is called a functional or integrative health practitioner. And what that means is these are practitioners that are building personalized health programs. So oftentimes, people throw around the terms personalized medicine or something of that effect, but it's not really personalized. These practitioners are actually taking metabolic labs, self-assessment forms, and building a program up around where you're at metabolically. But what I experienced going through that process was completely inefficient. It was not scalable, and it was completely disjointed, right? So I had a Dropbox folder with all of my lab reports. I had intake forms in PDF. I was tracking my health in Excel. I'm like entering measurements, and you're trying to make sense of it. And the aha moment that really came about for what is Biocanic is, look, the technology and tools exist in the traditional space, and in fact, it's even a lot easier to do today with all of the new cloud-based technologies. Why hasn't somebody built this? And so really the inspiration for the business was, look, this is a personalized health delivery platform that can really streamline and scale these practitioners to help reach more people and ultimately take cost out of the system. And so really the inspiration and focus for Biocanic, which is intended to be the biology mechanic, which is, hey, let's tech enable these practitioners to do things faster, more effectively, just like you would hook up your car to to that computer system and it tells you what sensors are off. We want to be that platform that tells that practitioner, hey, this is important, this is important, this isn't important, here's where you should start.
Right.
And really that's the conceptualization of the business.
Wow, that's really interesting. It sounds like a huge problem to me. So like all things that are sort of mechanical, or when you're using Excel and
Yep.
Dropbox and all of those tools, it seems like a huge problem. So what was sort of your approach? How did you how did you think
Yeah.
about the MVP or start creating that first solution for the
Yeah.
space?
Yeah, great question. And I'm sure, like most people out there, I think I've read every book under the sun. But really, we took a lean startup agile approach. Why we're starting first with this market is these are people that are actively quantifying themselves. And so that means the data is already being done. It's just not centralized and aggregated. And that's why we're so laser focused on practitioners. So instead of trying to get somebody to do the testing, they're already doing it. It's just trapped and it's siloed. And so really that's really why we said, look, how do we first liberate the data from all of these different sources, right? But then we also have to pair it to what are the problems that we're solving, right? So the practitioner is efficiency. How do I build and design and implement a program? How do I track that program? How do I measure the effectiveness, right? And so you can pair the freeing of the data with the workflows and the pain points that are happening to these practitioners every single day. And so, for example, as we kind of iterate and deliver new features, one of them was the assessment forms. So you would do a self-assessment. You're going to be scored on based upon how you respond to certain answers. Like, do you have, brain fog in the afternoon? Do you have headaches? Do you have skin issues? That creates a scoring system, right? So originally, that the workflow is, hey, I get a PDF back, and I, as a practitioner, have to read it. Well, hey, how about we break that out and we actually put it in context of the other information that you're getting. Now, all of a sudden, as a practitioner, instead of having 3 documents open and flicking back and forth between windows, I can see everything all at once. Right. That creates value by driving efficiency. And then what we do from this kind of business development approach is, straight out of the lean startup agile, is what's the next most important pain point that we need to solve, and how can we solve it elegantly? And that's how we continuously do that. And so we've been doing that for 18 months now, and we were about every 3 to 4 weeks. Now we're on a cadence of about new features every 2 weeks.
Wow, fantastic. So I understand you essentially started on the project in 2018, I think.
Yep.
But I'm guessing there was sort of an initial period where you were sort of just developing your initial product, right? So when did you first actually give that, if you would, beta or even an alpha product to a practitioner? And what was that initial conversation like?
Yeah, I mean, so summer of 2018, there was a conference where this specific group of practitioners that we started with had, and we basically put together a sketch prototype, right? Where you could click on stuff, and we said, hey, this is what we're thinking. And
Right,
everybody came in and was like, that would be awesome. I'd love for you to do that. So we
right.
started development that fall of 2018. And then in 2019, June of 2019 is when we launched our first iteration. And we came to market as a free platform. And that was an intentional choice because we knew that we weren't complete, right? We knew that it was solving some things, but we had to add certain workflows to really get to that point where somebody was going to reach in their wallet and pay us. And so
Right.
that was June of 2019. And then March of 2020, right about when the pandemic hit, we actually launched our subscription service. And so we had accumulated a number of practitioners through our free product, and then we converted them over. Obviously, not everybody came along with us. But then we've continued to both mine that existing user base and convert them over, but also grow our brand exposure and our practitioner base. And so now we're coming up on our first year of actual increasing revenue or actual revenue.
Got it. So I want to talk about 2020 and what happened during the pandemic. But before we get to that, there are two things I want to make sure that we're very clear on. The practitioners you're talking about are essentially medical professionals. Sort of describe that profile for me. Who is that ideal customer for you?
Yeah, so we have three personas that we target. And the first persona is kind of this independent health coach. Most people aren't familiar with them. They are growing at about 25 to 30% year on year.
Yep.
And you're starting to see health coaching come into clinical practice. But these are kind of independent health coaches that have their own book of business where they're just engaging with people and selling their services. The second one is an interesting one, is we're seeing a lot of clinicians that have been in the fee-for-service or the insurance-based world who have just burnt out on it. And they're like, look, I want to actually connect with patients and I do clinical work and have a relationship. And so we see dietitians, acupuncturists, chiropractors who are evolving their practice into building this membership or engagement model, but they're doing it in a more of a virtual light. And then really our biggest focus now, which is kind of our third persona, is the brick and mortar integrative health clinic. So some people may have used these. Sometimes you see them as a hybrid. They're, sometimes they have IV centers, platelet centers, hormone replacement therapy. But these are generally naturopaths, licensed MDs. And what they're doing is they're actually selling concierge medical services. Mm-hmm. And what's also interesting is we're seeing MDs giving up their GP, their general practices, selling those off and actually evolving to come into this cash pay world because they've just been so burnt out on churning through patients, every 15 minutes, I got to see a new patient. Now I actually get to do clinical work and clinical investigative work. And so those are the three real kind of personas that we focus on.
Fantastic. So I think that was the distinction that I was looking for, that we're not talking about, your family physician who is churning out each patient at 15, every 15 minutes. We're not talking about insurance pay. We're not talking about anything that, traditional medicine covers. We're talking about a whole other side of the medical world.
Exactly. So we do not sell to a hospital system. The hospital system is going to continue to run on Epic, Cerner, Allscripts, and they're going to, go after their billing codes. We are focused on this accelerating space of people who are serving these now highly motivated people who aren't getting answers in the traditional medical space. Most often, these individual patients are basically saying, I'm not willing to take prescriptions for the rest of my life just to deal with my skin issues, headaches, sleep issues. Right. Help me figure out what I need to do to fix the issue.
Got it. And the other, I think we've sort of touched on this several times. So I just want to make it ultra clear that your customer is the practice or is the medical practitioner. It is not your product does not reach all the way through to the end patient or the retail customer, right?
So we sell to practitioners. Practitioners use it with their patients. So they do use our product, but we do not sell to them.
Right. So that's exactly what I'm saying. That the patient is not downloading an app on their phone or anything like that. This is the doctor actually has it on their computer or their device.
So yes, the physician uses primary is the user of the product, but the patient also sees the information as well. It's
Oh,
not a
okay.
downloadable app, but we do some engagement, some kind of reminders, notifications, information sharing, and all of that is done through the application.
Got it. Got it. But you're getting paid through the practice. So the
Correct.
person writing your check is really the medical practice, not the
Correct.
individual patient. Okay,
Correct.
perfect. Okay, so now let's continue on that story and talk
Yep.
about 2020.
Yeah.
You have an MVP out. You have a handful of customers using the platform. What happened when we went into lockdown and when all the
Yeah.
focus shifted to COVID?
Yeah. No, no, I mean, it's interesting, right? So on the business side, our sales and marketing plan was focused around a lot of face-to-face conferences. Well, that went away, right? So that was a
Right.
pretty big headwind for us to drive adoption. But the flip side of that is with this massive shift to telemedicine, and it really got people thinking, look, hey, I can deliver high quality care. It's actually more convenient for my patients, but I also need a technology tool that can support that engagement model. And so from a timing and luck perspective, we're really well positioned in terms of being able to support those models. And because we're built around kind of this longer term engagement of healthcare, we're really well positioned for kind of how the market has shifted, right?
Right.
I don't know about you, but I finally was able to just see my general practice physician for my annual checkup, and I didn't have to go to the office, right?
Right.
I booked my meeting at 2 o'clock. She was on there at 2:05, and I was off the call at 2:15. I had no transit time. It was awesome, right?
Right.
And I think you're starting to see that the general society is willing to accept that, and I think that's a really big tailwind for us, just as the market moves towards this virtual, but even a virtual hybrid model, right? Think about all the time and the touch points you're able to do just from your home as a clinician, right? It's so much
Right.
more efficient.
Absolutely. So that's fantastic. How did that actually translate into your business? Were you adding customers, right? Adding new accounts as the year progressed?
Yeah, so we were. It was definitely slower than we had planned in March and April. The
Right.
biggest issue that we ran into from a licensed, so that third persona, the licensed MD,
Hmm.
the issue was the MDs were uncertain as to who they could serve relative to state licensing issues. So there was a period of time between March and May where a lot of them were just trying to figure out the legality of being able to serve somebody on a virtually only model. That completely flipped over by the summertime and everybody was comfortable. And that's when we really started to see a lot of user adoption and user interest.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So now let's bring that up to today.
Yep.
Where are you right now? I'm guessing your product, at least MVP, is done, but you're developing additional functionality. So let's
Yep.
talk about the platform first. Where is the platform today?
Yeah. So like I said, we've been in market as a subscription product since March. We continuously iterate. So I would say March was at our actual MVP that somebody would pay for,
Hmm.
March 2020. So we've been iterating all along the way. And what we do is we're a B2B SaaS model. So we have a basic entry level price, and then we have add-on modules that you as a practitioner can choose to use. These practitioners have a number of different approaches. And so some things work for some that they don't necessarily want in others. But coming from my experience, having acquired a number of land and expand SaaS businesses, it's a really effective way to kind of grow your revenue over time because
Yep.
you can get in, solve those mission critical pain points. They feel comfortable with your solution, and then they want to do more with you.
Right.
And so we now have 3 add-ons. So we have a form builder, we have a diet and meal planning, we have a multi-practitioner organization. We just launched our customized interface so that they can customize the experience to their particular clinic branding. And then we also partnered with a supplement dispensary, and now we get a revenue stream as a part of supplement reordering through the platform. So we've now
Oh, okay.
added, and that's how we continue to see the businesses kind of building a number of different opportunities.
Right.
And so we see, we have a full roadmap in front of us in terms of where we really can grow our share of wallet over time.
Right.
And then also, as we solve these kind of bigger ticket items, we can expand our market share because we're going to be able to serve more clinicians.
Got it. Got it. That's perfect. What does, without getting into specific numbers, because we'll have the specific numbers
Yeah,
in your financial model and all of
yeah,
those things in your profile, what does the client growth look like over the last 6 months, let's say, starting the summer of 2020?
Yeah, so we generally grow at about 10 to 20% month over month, or so month on month,
Right.
which is good and it's respectable for
That's
us.
healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good and it's a reflect. And we have less than 10% churn. When people sign up for a free trial, we get about 80% conversion rate. So it's a good affirmation that we have a really strong product market fit. So really, that's good. I think for us, it's this year being our kind of third year is all about scale and user adoption. So our focus is really accelerating that month on month user growth.
Got it. Okay. And just to go back to your ideal customer profile, one thing I didn't ask you that I'm just thinking about now, how many users do you generally get in each practice? Is it just one person, one doctor or physician signing up, or is it usually larger offices,
Yeah.
8, 10, 12 or more?
Yeah, great question. So just from an overall market sizing perspective, there's about 1 million practitioners in our space of, call it, complementary and alternative medicine. There's 100,000 practitioners in the US that specifically do the lab testing and this kind of personalized program. So there's a lot of other practitioners that may just do one size fits all approaches. We're really focused on these personalized programs.
Right.
In general, the clinic sizes go from about 3 people to a maximum of 10. Because this is early, it is a highly fragmented market. So the actual user size is generally small.
Got it. Okay. And do you generally charge by the user or do you charge by patients?
We charge by the user.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've intentionally taken that approach because our competitors have a patient-based approach, which then is a pain point for our customers because it's like if I have 50 patients, I go to the next tier, right? And then it creates this weird perverse incentive of, oh, well, if I get to that 51st patient, I'm going to delete a patient so I can stay under the tier, right? We're about building a data model. So we want to encourage them to use us for, whether it's 1 patient or 10,000 patients, we want to be able to enable that because that's going to help build the data. That's going to help create further value in a future state. So we just have a fixed user pricing.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, and these are all great. I think you're in a really sweet spot right now to hit that sort of hockey stick, if you would. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the next sort of 12 months. What are your priorities? What are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah. So obviously, as I mentioned, this is a highly fragmented market, and so for us, it's how do we get bigger chunks of users. And so we just deployed our first practice management integration. So we're health program intelligence. So we sit on top of the EMR, the medical records. So we are not trying to disrupt their core business operations. We're trying to make them better. So what we've done is we've partnered with the first practice management company, and our goal is to market to their install base because we can add value. We can create their platform by partnering with us. And then being able to leverage those users that are already using that. So being able to get, say, 10% acquisition of 1,000 user base, right? Now all of a sudden, our month-on-month growth can go by 200 or 300%. And that's really, so that is our big target, is building that scalable integration infrastructure. And then the second big lever for us is being able to do population analytics for practitioners. And so they are doing these kind of multi-omic, multivariant kind of testing. And so oftentimes they'll want to know, hey, what are my females over the age of 75? What's their average testosterone? And do they have H. pylori present, right? I know those values don't make sense, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to unlock the data from different siloed spaces to help them make decisions faster about the next person coming in the door. And that's where we really see a step up in value, because that next step of efficiency is no more life on PubMed, no more life reading books, no more life asking your community, because the platform is going to give you the insight at the point of care when you need it, when you have that context.
Fantastic. This actually sort of just triggered another question in my head. There are a lot of resources that are already available, research-based resources. Are you integrating any of that data, or are you just working with your own data that you're getting from other physicians, other practitioners?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So there is known interpretation for each individual test. There
Mm-hmm.
is no known interpretation for what two tests mean in the context of each other. Does
Mm-hmm.
that so?
Okay. Yeah.
So if I have a stool microbiome lab, there's an interpretation guide that I, as a clinician, can read, and I can learn about a given marker and what the
Yep.
potential complications are. And I have my LabCorp blood chemistry, and I know what these markers mean, and I know how to interpret this. What doesn't exist is when I have out of whack markers here and out of whack markers here. Well, which was the cause? Which was the effect?
Right.
Or are they even related? And that doesn't exist. And that's where I think this platform has the ability to leverage those insights, because we're building this real world data set that we'll be able to say, hey, we've actually seen this before. And by the way, this person did well on doing this, right?
Right.
Because we're able to close the loop by operationalizing all parts of the program.
Really interesting. Okay. That sounds great. It also sounds like there's a lot of sort of technology behind the scenes work happening. So I want to touch on your team. You're obviously a good researcher. You
Yeah.
have the fundamentals down. But let's talk about Andy, your CTO, and what other supports you have within the company.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously everybody knows my background. My partner and co-founder, Andy, we actually grew up together, so we've known each other since the third grade. So we both have strong technology backgrounds. I obviously spent more time in marketing. He actually has been executives at a number of different internet companies that have done different applications. He actually started his own business in the user acquisition and ad space. But his focus is really around the technology development. I'm more on the business development and more on the data science side because of my clinical background. But Andy's really focused on really driving our development team, ensuring that we're building scalable infrastructure, ensuring that we're also building it in the right way. So we're not overly building stuff into the front end. We're really thinking about it from a data perspective and a data visualization rather than hard coding everything. And so that's been really critical. And then he's also really focused on our integration approach. So we integrate with a number of different wearables. We have a number of different partners, from CRM systems to the supplement dispensaries. So how do we build that infrastructure within our technology stack to make it seamless for the individual, right? Just, if you think about how seamless it is today to, use your Google to log in to synchronize everything and pull everything together in, a single financial view. We want to be able to do that in the same way that these practitioners want to bring the data together seamlessly. And so for us, the focus is making sure that we have an integration and an integration approach that makes sense and is scalable. And then ultimately building the analytics behind that once we get past the integration approach. And so we've been working with an outsourced dev team. They've been great on the front end. Again, agile approach, delivery every 2 weeks, a full backlog of great stuff coming along. Then we do have a data scientist, a part-time data scientist who I work with. So we just deployed our first webinar looking at a retrospective analysis of about 5,000 different labs in the system. Not complex analysis, just basic stats and population analytics. Super great response. So we know that this market is really keyed up for getting those levels of insights. We just did some initial kind of machine learning approaches to see if we could do some predictions within the data, really kind of got some exciting stuff going. So we feel really good about the path that we're on and really that value creation on the data science side. And then we have a customer success manager. So she is focused on making sure that our clients are up, our practitioners are up and running. Coming from my SaaS background, customer success, I don't want churn. I don't want somebody to sign up, not know how to do something, and then churn away real quick and have a bad experience. We want to make sure that they're supported. That also creates a understanding of the product and our customers' pain points that then feeds back into the roadmap. So that's been a heavy focus for us on the success side. And then we have a marketing resource as well. So that's, it's been really great. And then our advisory board's been great just from an entrepreneurial perspective, technology perspective, and a functional medicine perspective.
Fantastic, fantastic. I saw some of that in your pitch deck. So
Yeah.
for the viewers who are watching, they can certainly log in, get the specific profiles.
Yep.
You named 5 or 6 people, I think,
Yep.
and then plus a dev team. Is the dev team onshore, offshore?
No, it is onshore.
Okay.
And it's the same dev team that we've worked from the outset. So
Okay.
they're actually Orange County based.
Oh,
And
nice.
so,
Okay.
yeah, and it's been great. We have a lead dev and some junior devs underneath them. And we've got a really, we had, again, I'm not going to lie, we had some teething pains early on to find the
Of course.
right, what the level of documentation is, and getting, our expectations built into the processes for us. But both myself and my co-founder, we've worked with offshore dev teams. And for the, if we were doing, $100,000 in dev a month offshore, there's a big financial benefit. But
Yep.
having an onshore dev team that's in the same time zone, that speaks the same language, that's on the same page, that efficiency is so much better in terms of dollar return on dollar invested.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so I think you're putting all the right pieces in place. So the last question, I guess, last question is, what's the sort of grander vision? Where are you hoping to be in 3, 5, 7, 10 years? And what's your vision for the company?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love the industry that we're in, and it's great, but it's not it's not going to drive the 10x return that people are looking for. Where we want to go with this platform is build this data model that is a personalized health engine. Then once we can do that and we can reliably predict on an individual basis the right intervention, and I think our first step is going to be in the employer wellness programs. So if you think about the Larks, Newmans, Amadas, Livongos of the world, they're coming to an employer with a health and wellness program, whether it's diabetes related or not. It's still one size fits all. That means if you are in the program, whether you're 65-year-old female or a 23-year-old male, you get the same program. You may get a health coach or a chatbot, but it's not personalized for you. We think that bringing this level of personalization in, saying, hey, look, the 65-year-old female has Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. She needs to focus on a different dietary intervention than the 22-year-old male. That is going to create value from a competitive differentiation standpoint. So we think that we can bring a ton of value to that market. And then ultimately our goal is to enter into the standard of care. That is a very high bar to get into from a data analytics outcome study perspective. And so we kind of put that as go to market phase 3. But, as we build the data model, as we get sharper, as the algorithms converge and be more precise and more value creation, that's how we think about growing this. And aspirationally, I would love to be able to enter the standard of care with a point of care system for helping clinicians understand the broader context so they can make the better decision related to even pharmaceutical interventions.
Right. So you answered one part of the question and you sort of skipped that on the other part. So I'm going to ask you one more time.
Okay.
What's sort of the timeline for that entering the sort of the larger institutional market and then the standard care market?
Sorry, fair enough. So our target is, look, in 2021 we are focused on accelerating user adoption and driving our recurring revenue base in this market. Our goal would be then to raise a Series A in 2022 and 2021, which will then allow us to really go after that employer market. We believe that if, so from a data model perspective, at the end of the year, we should have about 2 million data points that would give us a base level of understanding. If we entered the employer market in 2022, then over the next 2 years, so 3 years out, we would have around 10 to 15 million data points. Now that data model is very robust. That would then allow us to do, more of a prospective study to try to enter some sort of indication for use in the medical space. So that would be 1 year to get to phase 2, then 2 to 3 beyond that to get to that third phase.
Got it. So we're talking about 2024 or thereabouts.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. So we've sort of covered a lot of territory as far as your background, company. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think we should cover that I might have left off?
No, I think it's a really exciting space. I think a lot of times investors, and I've had a number of conversations, and investors have a hard time wrapping their head around us because one, we're health tech, but we're not in insurance reimbursement, right? So
Right.
we're not going after a reimbursement code. There's not an FDA clearance for us, right? So we're not health tech, but we are health tech. And
Right.
we're in a consumer space, but we're not consumer. And I think one of the things is, for people to really understand the opportunity here, this is not new money being spent. This is consolidation of money being wasted. And so, I always ask this question: do you have a cabinet of supplements at your home? How do you know if you're working? How do you know if they're working? And are you still taking them? Do you have a gym membership? Did you buy the probiotic yogurt? Do you have a wearable? Are you looking at your sleep, right? When you actually total that up, it's a $4 trillion opportunity, but most of it is completely wasted, right?
Yep.
And that's because people don't really understand what's going to work for them right now, right? And so, the big headlines a lot was the keto diet, right? Keto diet was all the rage. It might still be. Now it's
Right.
vegan, plant-based, right? The reality is keto may work for you, but it probably won't. Vegan may work for you, but it probably won't. But why? And that's because it's your microbiome, it's your hormone status, it's your stress, your food sensitivities. So how, this is really, instead of this cycle of trial and error of a bunch of healthy products, this is the future for determining how best to deploy the dollars you're already wasting. And I think once people get their understanding around that, which is, if I said to you, if you gave me $5,000, I could help you lose 30 pounds and be healthy and, feel better for the rest of your life, you would say, no, of course, right?
No brainer,
And
right?
that is the market that we're in. And that's the opportunity that we're in. So you shouldn't put a health tech or consumer lens. It's really this health and wellness kind of hybrid space, and it's consolidation of those dollars.
Fantastic. That's a great way to sort of sum up the entire conversation and what you're trying to achieve. Once again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it, sort of getting to know your background and understanding in detail sort of what you're hoping to achieve. I hope to continue the conversation after the interview and get you the resources you need to sort of continue on that journey.
Super
Thanks
excited.
again.
Yeah, would love to meet everybody.
Absolutely. All right. Talk to you later.